Hello and welcome to Simply Balanced, the podcast where we dive into, all things balanced. I'm your host, Taylor Grosso, a registered dietitian with a passion to helping you find your unique Balance Girl aesthetic in this often hectic world. Each episode will explore different facets of living a balanced life, whether it's unraveling the latest nutrition trends, discovering mindful eating strategies, or discussing tips for a balanced lifestyle that fits your routine. Balance isn't about perfection, it's about making choices that feel right for you, nurturing your body and mind, and enjoying life's simple pleasures. So whether you're sipping your morning coffee, heading out for a walk, or winding down for the evening, I'm thrilled to have you join me. So let's dive in and talk, all things balanced. Hello, besties, and welcome back to another episode of Simply Balanced. As always, thank you for being here, and I am so happy that you are listening to this podcast and that this is part of my job. This week's episode is a solo Q&A. I asked you guys what you wanted to know, and I felt like I got a ton of different questions, so I tried to kind of separate them into 3 different categories, and we're going to dive into each category separately, and I did like 4 questions from each category. However, if we talk about something that you guys want to hear more about, send me a DM so that I know like the topics that you guys are all looking for. So the first category is going to be food. Then we're going to talk about metabolism and hormones. And then we're also going to just do some lifestyle questions that I got asked as well. So let's dive right on in and talk all things solo Q&A. So let's dive right on in and start with the food category. So one of the top questions that I got was my favorite ways to incorporate more fiber into my diet, which I love that we're talking about fiber so much in 2024. She is that girl this year. And there are many reasons why we should be incorporating more fiber into our diet. Fiber helps to balance out blood sugar levels. It also helps to keep us more full and satisfied. It can also contribute to better and improved gut health. Like if you are wanting to improve your gut health, before you try or buy any expensive supplement, try increasing your fiber. You got constipation, increase your fiber. Also make sure that you're increasing your water consumption as you're increasing your fiber consumption. Just trust me on that, and also go low and slow when it comes to increasing your fiber. For women, we want to try to aim for like 25 grams of fiber per day. And for men, we want to aim for around 38 grams of fiber per day. So there's one thing that we have, ladies. We don't have to eat as much fiber as men do. That's one thing that we've got. We don't have to eat quite as much. But some of my favorite ways to incorporate more fiber, number one is whole grains. Like I love using whole wheat bread for toast, for sandwiches, for a variety of different things. Anything that is 100% whole wheat is going to have a good amount of fiber. Usually most whole wheat bread has anywhere from 4 to 5 grams per serving. So that's typically per 2 slices. And the reason that we're wanting to try to get things from these whole wheat products is not because the white product is bad or not good for us. It's just that the processing that happens when they're turning a product from a whole wheat into a white product, we do strip out some of the fiber. So aiming for around half your grains to be whole grains is a really easy way to make sure that you're getting in some good fiber from those whole grain sources. So things like whole wheat bread, brown rice, quinoa. I also absolutely love quinoa salads lately. It's one of my favorite things to make in the summer months because you can keep it in the refrigerator, and honestly, it gets like better as the days go on because it sits and it like marinates in the dressing that you put on there, and it's so delicious, not to mention that it's also a complete source of protein, meaning that it contains all 9 essential amino acids that your body cannot make on its own. So quinoa is another really fantastic way that I love to add some fiber into my diet. And also beans, the magical fruit, right? We've heard that like all of our lives that beans make you too. Well, that is because they are rich in fiber. Adding in beans to things like your taco dishes, your enchiladas, any type of like Mexican dish for me is always a really easy bean addition. I actually have a video coming out really soon with the USA Pulses, which is basically an organization to support beans and pulses, legumes, all of those different types of things. And what we're wanting to do there is I actually created a bean salsa, and it's creating like a pico, but then you add pinto and black beans into it. One, it's freaking delicious and delightful. And number 2 is that it's going to pack in so much more fiber and so much more plant-based protein as well. Beans are also a really great way to not only get in fiber, but also get in that plant-based protein. So I love adding all different kinds of beans. Like for example, I made a kale, like kind of Caesar-esque salad for lunch this week, and I've been adding in great white northern beans beans just for some added fiber and a little bit of extra carbohydrates to make sure that I'm actually fueling my body, because we all know carbs are the brain and the body's main source of energy. So that's another really easy way that I like to add in fiber. And then last but not least, my other favorite fiber addition is berries, especially now that we're kind of rolling into the spring and summer months where berries are just so juicy and so freaking delicious. But you guys also know that I love my frozen fruit, like frozen wild blueberries. I don't know what kind of sorcery they put in wild blueberries, but they are so much better than just regular old blueberries. Berries, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, they have varying fiber contents, but they range from like 6 grams up to 9 grams per half cup to 1 cup serving, depending on which type of berry it is. So like when you only need 25 grams in a day, if you're getting 6 to 9 grams with a serving of berries in your yogurt bowl or in your oatmeal, in your smoothie, wherever it is that you're adding this fruit in, you are packing a fiber punch with something that's so delicious and juicy and yummy. I can't get over berries. They're another favorite addition. Ooh, I thought of one more. So sorry, you guys. I love fiber, and I feel like there are so many foods that you just don't think of as a fibrous food. Another one is avocado. A whole medium avocado actually has around 10 grams of dietary fiber. Now, we probably don't necessarily eat the entire avocado, but you think about that. If you have half of an avocado on like avocado toast, if you add it to your tacos, if you add it into some sort of grain bowl that you're eating, if you add it to some sort of salad, you're going to pack in about 5 grams of dietary fiber per that half avocado serving. Not to mention, you're also going to pack in some healthy fats. So a super easy way to add in more fiber is also by adding in avocados. Those are all of my personal favorite ways. So whole grains, berries, avocados, and beans. 4 favorite ways to increase my fiber intake. Question number 2 is eating dessert without guilt or shame. So this is kind of a fully loaded question because obviously the guilt or shame is coming from somewhere in terms of the emotions that you have tied to food. One of the initial things that I work on with clients in terms of working on their relationship with food and foods that they have previously deemed bad, like dessert, for example, is understanding that there are no good and bad foods at a moral level. Now, this is where people get mad at me and they're like, so you're saying dessert is as healthy as broccoli? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that yes, we can recognize that broccoli is more nutrient dense. It provides our body with more nutritional density and more nutritional benefit than something in the dessert category. But that does not make the dessert morally bad, and it does not make the broccoli morally good. It makes the broccoli more nutrient dense, the dessert less nutrient dense, but that doesn't mean that you have to feel like a bad person for choosing to enjoy the dessert. Because think about the way in which you talk to yourself when you eat dessert. Are you finding that you're saying, oh my God, I'm being so bad by having this ice cream, or ugh, if I eat this ice cream, I have to run 6 miles tomorrow, or ugh, I'm just being awful by eating this. This is junk. This is crap. When we talk about food in that manner, it's going to relate to our self-worth and our own moral value. And I say this all the time, but if you eat a kale quinoa salad and punch someone in the face, you're still a bad person. So you can eat a cookie, you can eat ice cream and not be a bad person. And that really helps to remove the guilt or shame. Something else that I would emphasize on is thinking about this as a learning lesson, okay? So when you start to view food on a more neutral playing field and you start to focus on intuitive eating, I know that everybody likes to say intuitive eating is just unconditional permission to eat, which yes, in a sense, at the core basic level, it is, because you're viewing foods in a sense where you do have permission to enjoy all of them. But being intuitive also requires you to evaluate how those foods make you feel. So if you are eating an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's, does that make you feel good mentally and physically? And this is not creating shame or guilt around that consumption if you don't feel good mentally or physically. It's about taking that knowledge that you have, being mindful in that moment and asking yourselves those questions, and then evaluating. Maybe if I only have a serving of the Ben & Jerry's next time, and also make sure that I have a well-balanced dinner before I eat the Ben & Jerry's, I'll feel better mentally and physically because I'm satisfying the craving, but I'm also not overindulging damaging to the point where it makes me feel not good mentally and physically. It's about taking those experiences and turning them into something that's a learning experience, not something that should elicit shame or guilt. You can recognize that when you eat the whole pint, it doesn't serve your body in a positive way. But maybe the next time that you do it, you have that smaller serving and it does serve your body in a positive way. You achieved the satisfaction from the craving, and you also didn't feel like you overindulged or overate. So I think one of the first steps with eating dessert without shame or guilt is really recognizing that relationship that you have with desserts and recognizing that if you truly want whatever that dessert is, you have the permission and access to have it whenever you want, but evaluating what quantities and what portion sizes actually make you feel good and best serve your body. That's how you can look at it from a learning perspective rather than a guilt or shame perspective. Question number 3, rolling into supporting cholesterol levels. I actually get this question a lot. And the first thing that I want to debunk is the fact that dietary cholesterol does not affect your cholesterol levels. So, right, for the longest time, we thought that like, oh my God, you can't eat eggs because they're high in cholesterol and they're gonna negate your cholesterol. They're gonna make your bad cholesterol go up, right? We thought that for a really long time. But cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, actually does not affect your cholesterol levels. If you go to the doctor and you get a metabolic panel done, you're going to get an LDL cholesterol, an HDL cholesterol, a triglyceride panel, and a total cholesterol. That's what we call like a cholesterol metabolic panel. Your LDL cholesterol, we know that I don't like to use the terminology good or bad, but it's typically how it's oftentimes referred to. Your LDL cholesterol is known as your bad cholesterol because having high LDL is associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. Having high HDL cholesterol, or your beneficial heart protecting cholesterol, as I like to say, means that you have less of a chance of cardiovascular disease. So we want to have a higher ratio of that HDL cholesterol and a lower ratio of that LDL cholesterol. These two will then contribute to what your total cholesterol levels are. If you have a lower LDL cholesterol, a higher HDL cholesterol, your total cholesterol will probably also be within range of what it's supposed to be. If you have higher LDL cholesterol, lower HDL cholesterol, your total cholesterol might be higher than what it's supposed to be. And so when we talk about supporting our cholesterol levels, there are quite a few different ways that we can look at this. Number one is what types of fats are we consuming? So like I said, dietary cholesterol does not have an impact on these levels. However, the type of fat that we are eating can have an impact on our cholesterol. So there's two different types of fats. There's unsaturated fat and there's saturated fat. Saturated fat is going to be solid at room temperature. It's things like coconut oil. It's things like coconut oil, lard, butter, those things that, right, they're hard at room temperature. Meat that has high marbling or high fat content, something like an 80-20. That saturated fat content is what is potentially contributing to a higher LDL cholesterol. So reducing our saturated fat intake and increasing our unsaturated fat intake. So that's things like olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, fatty fish like salmon. Those are going to contribute to those HDL cholesterol levels and also help to decrease our LDL cholesterols. So it's not that you have to cut out all saturated fat intake. It's more so just moderating that saturated fat intake and increasing or adding in more of that unsaturated fat intake. And then number 2 is actually going back to the first question, fiber. Fiber can actually really help to support our cholesterol levels. So if you are someone who is struggling with high cholesterol, the best 2 diet tips that I can give you is reducing your overall saturated fat intake and increasing your fiber intake. So once again, increasing your consumption of whole grains, fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds. All of these things are going to help to increase that fiber and, in cohesion, lower those cholesterol levels. And then the last question that I had in terms of the food category is my go-to lunches, which this is a funny question to me, not like funny that someone asked me it, but I always kind of giggle the fact that people are always asking me for like recipe ideas when I am also out here struggling with coming up with recipes and different ideas. It's so funny though, because like when I talk to my clients, it's like I can spit off 16 different recipes, and then my husband would be like, what do you want for dinner this week? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I have no idea what I want for dinner or for lunch or for any meal for that matter. So it's always funny when people ask me about like, what are your go-to lunches? I'm like, I don't really know. However, it's a good time for you to ask this question because I have actually been on a journey of what I like to call self-care. My conversation that I had with Cassidy really kind of inspired me to start viewing like meal prep as something that's actually a little bit more intuitive and is going to reduce stress on me throughout the week. Because what was happening was that I was kind of relying on like leftovers from our dinner the night before to be a meal for me the next day. However, my husband goes into the office, and so like if someone needs an easy lunch, it's going to be him because I work remote. So I have the opportunity to just make my own lunch, right? Like I can make lunch at home if I need to. However, I was then not buying myself anything to make. And then I was sitting there just looking at the fridge, looking at the pantry and being like, I guess girl lunch it is. And then I would pull out a bunch of random things. And yes, it would be somewhat of a balanced plate, but it usually wasn't that satisfying. And it usually wasn't even something that I really wanted. It was just whatever we had on hand. So I've been meal prepping ingredients to help keep me a little bit more prepared. So going into like the summer months, 3 of my favorite things to eat for lunch are salads, pasta salad, and quinoa salad. Yes, all salad varieties, but all super easy to prep and super easy to make versatile, adding in different flavors, taste, and textures. So like, for example, for the salad that I made this week, it was like a maple Dijon kind of twist on like a Caesar kale salad. So I massaged all of my kale ahead of time with a little bit of olive oil, which is going to reduce the bitterness. It's also going to help to start the breakdown of the fibers to make it a little bit easier to digest. So massaged that. I shredded a rotisserie chicken. That's going to be my main protein source. And then I made a homemade maple Dijon dressing. Super easy. It's like olive oil, Dijon, maple syrup, lemon juice, and I think there's like salt and pepper. Super easy dressing. Kept all those things in the fridge, and then I've just been adding hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds. I made some homemade croutons with my leftover sourdough that I had from last week, and I've been adding all of that in, and it's so freaking delicious, and I've been looking forward to it like every single day. Quinoa salads, I love making a variety of them. So typically I'll do some sort of dressing that uses like a vinegar, some lemon juice, some olive oil, and then like whether it's parsley or cilantro or different types of herbs and spices to really bring out the flavors. And then adding in different beans. So chickpeas, black beans, pinto beans, kind of whatever flavor or flair that I'm going for there. Then once again, shredding a rotisserie chicken as a really easy protein source. The beans also count towards plant-based protein. So you most definitely don't have to do the chicken. I just like to make sure that I'm getting in an adequate amount of protein. So I typically will do a mixture of beans and rotisserie chicken. And then I just do a slew of vegetables, cucumbers, bell peppers, red onions, tomatoes, kind of matching whatever sort of like flavor, taste, or texture I'm looking for. And then just chopping all those up and adding them in there. And like I said, the thing that I love about like both quinoa and pasta salads, because I really approach pasta salads from kind of the same direction. I just swap out the quinoa for pasta if I'm in the mood for it. And I love that like the longer that it sits in that dressing over the course of like 3 to 4 days, it actually tastes better and gets more flavorful because it's like soaking in that dressing. Oh, it's so freaking delicious. So those are kind of my like 3 go-tos in the summer. I feel like I also lean on smoothies a lot. Like as it starts to get hot outside, my appetite definitely shifts. It's always something that I struggle with in the summer months. So that's why I tend to lean into those more like colder lunches, like keeping the pasta salad, the quinoa salad in the refrigerator, or having things to make smoothies for a really easy lunch. And I always put some sort of like little crunchy topping on my smoothies, because a little pro tip, if you find yourself drinking smoothies and you feel like you don't feel full or like satisfied afterwards, because we don't chew when we eat smoothies, sometimes our brain and our stomach don't quite communicate that like, oh, we had food, we're full, we're satisfied. So if you can add like a little bit of chewing to your smoothie, whether you make it into a smoothie bowl or you just top it with something like granola or berries, it does help to increase that satisfaction. Sorry guys, we had a little bit of a coughing attack there, but it does help to increase the satisfaction by adding in that form of crunch. So those are all of the food questions. Now we're going to move into metabolism and hormones. Now, these could honestly all probably be their own podcast, so I'm not going to dive like super deep into all these topics, but if you guys have specific questions, like I said, send me a DM and let me know so that I can make sure that I make these into like full-on episodes. This is a question that I get literally all the time, and it's fixing metabolism after chronic dieting. So I first encourage you, if you haven't already, to listen to my episode where I break down how chronic dieting negatively impacts our metabolism. I think that that's a really good base to understand here. But the premise of that podcast is the fact that our metabolism, or our metabolic rate, is the amount of calories that we burn at rest to exist and survive. It's the amount of calories that our body exerts for physiological function. For most people, that's anywhere from 900 to 1,500 calories just to simply exist and survive. So you throw on all of the daily movement that you do. If you're someone who's exercising, you also throw exercise on top of that. You also throw on the thermic effect of food. Those are the three things that really affect our total daily energy expenditure, or the amount of calories that we burn in a day. Now, when you think about the fact that your body requires anywhere from 900 to 1,500 calories to simply exist and survive, if you're not providing your body with enough energy to even perform the physiological functions that it's doing, your body is going to have to adapt and down-regulate the amount of calories that it burns in order to complete those physiological functions. This can negatively impact some of those functions. One of the most common ones with chronic dieting being our digestive tract. Because your body does not have enough energy to support all of the functions, it is going to prioritize things like breathing, blood pumping, your heart beating, your brain functioning over your digestive tract, over things like reproduction. That's why oftentimes we'll hear people who have chronically yo-yo dieted, I'm bloated, I'm constipated, I feel like everything I eat makes me feel like shit. We'll also hear a lot of the times that you lose your menstrual cycle. A lot of those things have to do with the fact that your body is actually slowing down your metabolism because it doesn't have enough energy to perform those physiological functions. One of the best things that you can do, nobody's going to like this answer, in terms of fixing your metabolism after chronic dieting, slowly up your intake. You have to slowly work to up your caloric intake while focusing on prioritizing the right foods, meaning that you're focusing on blood sugar balance. That's one of the key factors to managing your metabolism and supporting your metabolism. When you have stable blood sugar levels, your metabolism is supported because your body knows that it's going to be getting consistent energy throughout the course of the day. You have consistency in your routine, and your body knows that. The thing that we don't recognize a lot about our brain is that if we are restricting something, whether it's carbs, whether it's sweets, whether it's desserts, it doesn't matter. Our brain cannot differentiate the stress of restriction versus the stress of simply not having access. Like, if you want dessert, right? You have the ability to get in your car, drive to the grocery store, and get that dessert. However, your brain is viewing it as a threat. It's viewing it as stress. It's viewing it as this thing like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to have carbs. I'm not allowed to have dessert. I can't have all of these things, XYZ. That's why when you allow yourself the permission to have it, you overindulge or overeat it, because your brain has this mindset that I don't know when I'm going to get access to this again. So I'm going to eat as much of it as possible in this very moment. And then that typically leads to that restrict, binge, guilt cycle. We're trying to get out of that restrict, binge, guilt cycle by creating more balanced blood sugar levels, providing our body with the beneficial macronutrients that it needs, carbohydrates, protein, fat, color, and also making sure that we're allowing space for the foods that we love and enjoy in a moderate and balanced way. Viewing all foods as a neutral space versus viewing them as these bad or good. And yes, you can improve your metabolism if you're someone who has been chronically dieting for a long time, but it's not something that's going to be a quick fix. And also, if you are experiencing some of these symptoms that I mentioned, where you think that your metabolism feels sluggish and it doesn't feel like it's working, you're constantly fatigued, you have no energy, you feel bloated, you don't feel good, there's a lot that could be playing into that in terms of your nutrition and your relationship with food. Because here's the other reality of the situation, is that if you're fucking stressed out in your head about food constantly, your gut's also stressed out. The rest of your body is also stressed out. When you can remove a lot of that stress that you have around food while also focusing on balancing out your meals and snacks, that's going to lift so much stress and inflammation off of your body in a way that you just cannot understand. So If you are someone who has been chronically dieting and you feel like your metabolism is shot, it is something that's going to take time. It's something that's going to take a lot of unlearning and a lot of mindset work. It's not going to be something that is a quick fix. So I just want to give that preface because I think a lot of the times we just think like, oh, if I just eat more. But it's not just about eating more. It's also about understanding the fundamentals of nutrition and how they actually impact your body in a positive way, healing that relationship with food and removing the stress that's associated with chronic dieting. So that's my little gist on fixing metabolism after chronic dieting, but I would also highly recommend listening to one of my early podcast episodes about metabolism to get a little bit more insight on that. Question number 2 in this category is celebrity supplements. What do I think of them? I have a lot of viewpoints on them, okay? So one of my issues with celebrity supplements is that they have a very large platform and they have a lot of money. So it's very easy in a sense for them to sell or create something. One of my biggest stipulations when it comes to supplements is looking for one that's third-party tested. That's always going to be my biggest stipulation because to make this a little bit more understandable, essentially the FDA regulates our food. Supplements are not considered a food, which means that the FDA, yes, regulates them in a sense, but they're basically just looking at them to make sure that they're not necessarily going to kill someone. They don't have to check that the legitimacy of what's in the product actually matches up to what's on the label, which is why there have been individuals in like college athletes, for example, where they've taken a supplement and then tested positive for a drug test. They had no clue that there was a drug in that supplement because it wasn't listed on the label, because why would a supplement company list that on a label? You would never buy it. But because it's not regulated to that extent, there's no way to prove the legitimacy of that product. So I am always recommending a product that is third-party tested because that means that it has been tested for potency, purity, and then also that what's in the label actually matches what is in the product itself. So you can look for third-party testing by, usually there's a little indicator or a label on it. You might also see it listed on their website as like lab or third-party tested, and it will oftentimes have something like NSF, Informed Sport Choice, or it'll have something like GMP lab certified. So that is what I'm typically looking for. So I guess in terms of like answering this question, I'm not necessarily against celebrity supplements, but also like if they're not third-party tested, I'm probably not taking them and I'm probably not recommending them. And also when it comes to supplementation, that is what a supplement should be used for. It should be used to supplement your diet. So with all of these celebrity supplements, like Lemmy was the one that was brought up. And like, I'm not necessarily, like I said, I haven't looked into them enough to be against them or for them. But for example, I know they have one that's like Lemmy de-bloat. I just gave a perfect example of where we're not touching on the root cause, where we could be over-exercising and under-eating, and that might be leading to a lot of our digestive complications versus just taking this supplement that promises to cure all. Finding that root cause and addressing dietary factors is always going to be my first line of defense before supplementation. If we do all the things that we're supposed to do with nutrition, exercise, habit change, and we still feel like there are gaps within our diet because we don't like certain foods or because we're still having certain complications, that's where then we can examine the potential for a supplement and how it might benefit that individual. So I do highly challenge you, instead of just jumping straight for a supplement, kind of think about what your diet currently looks like and if there's something that maybe could be done there before jumping into that supplement. Question number 3 is, am I on birth control and what would I do to support my body coming off of birth control? So I did a whole entire podcast episode on this. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. That was my birth control journey. So like why I came off of birth control, what it was like for me, and all of the different things. When I was on birth control, I was on Yasmin, which is Yasmin, I don't know how to say it. Yasmin. I was on that one and it's a pill form. So I was just taking a pill every single day. I was on it for 10 years. I decided to come off of it in 2020, January of 2020. And so I have been off of it for about 4 years now. And I would not come off of it cold turkey. That would be my number one recommendation. That's what I talked about during my podcast episode. Every single woman's journey is different. Not necessarily is everybody going to deal with post-birth control syndrome, but what we do know is that birth control can negatively impact the gut microbiome, and we also know that it can deplete the body of micronutrients that can be found in a prenatal. So things like folate, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium. So supporting your body, this is a great example of where supplementation is actually very helpful. If you are someone who is planning to come off of birth control, what I would highly recommend is taking a prenatal, a probiotic, and then also having some sort of, what's the third one? Magnesium. Those are typically the three that I oftentimes recommend. Ritual is my favorite recommendation for a prenatal. A probiotic, I would highly recommend working with a dietitian specifically to find one that is meant for your body. A general probiotic, they exist. They're out there. Ritual is another one that I oftentimes recommend if we're looking for like a general probiotic. However, I would recommend like talking with a dietitian to find one that fits exactly for you and your specific needs. And then in terms of like other things that I would do to support my body, like coming off of birth control, it's not evidence-based, but I have absolutely loved cycle syncing my workouts. I always like to preface with the fact that it's not evidence-based because as a dietitian, like that is my duty and my responsibility is to give evidence-based information. But for me specifically, I've noticed a massive difference in cycle syncing my workouts. And I talked a lot about that in my most recent episode and podcast. But if you're curious on like that specific journey for me, I would highly recommend going back and listening to that one. But supporting your body coming off of birth control, prenatal, probiotic, magnesium. Omega-3 is the other one that I oftentimes recommend as well. Nordic Naturals or Ritual are the two that I typically recommend for that. Omega-3s are fatty acids that can help to reduce inflammation within our body. And oftentimes we don't necessarily get enough omega-3 fatty acids from our actual diet. It's just not prominently found in our foods. So that's why I also recommend that as like a supplement because we can't really get it from food. Last question in metabolism and hormones. How do I find value and worth outside of my physical appearance or being known as the fit girl? I have been in and out of this journey for so many years. And I think that this was one of the hardest things to overcome when I was going through my eating disorder recovery because I based so much of my self-worth in how I looked, how physically fit I was. I loved when people told me I was disciplined. I love when people told me I had willpower. I loved the like external validation that I got from being that girl. But you know what else that girl did? She lost a lot of her friends because she stopped going out to eat. She lost her menstrual cycle. She lost a lot of hair. She lost the ability to regulate her body temperature. She lost the ability to go poop every day. She lost the ability to do the things that brought her joy because the only thing that consumed her brain was food and exercise. That girl was not happy. That girl was not living. That is a girl that I never want to be again. And so I think that that was something that really pulled me out of it, was recognizing that I'm putting so much value and worth into something that nobody else gives a shit about. Like, think about your friends, okay? Think about your best friend. Are you best friends with her because of the way she looks or because of how often she goes to the gym or because of what she eats? No. You're best friends with her because of the person that she is. And that is where I started to recognize that I can separate my body from who I am as a person. My body does not dictate who I am and why people want to be around me. And that's something that took years to come to the conclusion of. It's something that I'm still not like fully over. It's something that I still struggle with. And I think that starting to just recognize that separation and then also asking yourself, what are you outside of the fit girl? What other passions do you have? What are you good at? Like, I like to think that I'm a really good wife. I like to think that I'm a really good dog mom. I like to think that I'm a really good dietitian to my clients. I like to think that I am a really good daughter to my parents. And those are things that I value and things that I care about so much fucking more than looking a certain way or having six-pack abs. So figuring out what other valuable traits and worth do you have outside of your physical appearance? What do you feel proud of in and of yourself? And also recognizing that separation. Your body and who you are not the same thing. And your body does not have to look a certain way for you to be perceived in a certain way. And I understand that we live in a fat phobic society, and it is so fucking challenging to get that through our heads that our body is the least important thing about us. But I just want you to think about, like I said, your best friend and how much you love her. And the reason that you love her has not one iota to do with her body, not one thing. So just remind yourself of that that's also not the reason that people love you or gravitate towards you. And honestly, that was when I lost a lot of people in my life that I loved. It's when I lost myself. It's when I lost the version of myself that I did love. I didn't love that girl that was going through that time. Like, I look back and I have a lot of regrets from putting so much value and self-worth in that, because I think that, like I said, it's the reason that I had a massive group of friends in college, and I had a huge falling out with them because I didn't even have the words to express to them at the time why I was going through what I was going through. And now, like, I've definitely talked to some of them since then and like explained what was going on, and they've all been very understanding. But like, that was one of the lowest points in my life. I had gotten out of a breakup. I had lost all of my friends. I just didn't feel like myself. And that's never a point that I want to get to again, where I put so much value and worth into the way I looked that I lost myself. That was kind of a tangent, but I hope that that's helpful for individuals who are feeling the same way. And with that too, if you're feeling that way, I would also like, and this is not just me pushing my services, I always say this, like, whether it's me or another dietitian or a therapist, I don't care. But if you're feeling that way, it does help to have support and accountability to work through that and have someone reinforce that in your life. Having positive, healthy relationships that help you to see your value and your worth in a whole different light is incredibly important on that journey. Okay, and then last but not least, going off of a very deep topic into something that's a little bit more fun and lighthearted, I got some lifestyle questions. This one came from my husband himself, but I'm going to hype him up a little bit because I love him. So my favorite quality in my husband, there's a bajillion that I could pick from. That's the reason that I married him. I wouldn't have married him if there weren't 1,000 qualities about him that I love. But I tell him this all the time. My favorite quality about him is that it does not matter who the person is, what background they come from, what they are like, if they are different, it does not matter. That man will put a smile on their face and make them feel welcome. And that is something that has always attracted me to Zach, is that no matter the person, no matter their story, no matter what, he makes them feel seen, he makes them feel heard, he makes them feel loved, and he makes them feel appreciated. And I'm one of the few. Or one of the many, sorry, not one of the few. I'm one of the many that he's had that impact on in my life. And without him, I don't think that I would be where I'm at today with body image, with my business, with anything. Like, yes, I did a lot of inner work, but it's a prime example of how the relationships that you are in directly affect your confidence and your self-worth. And that man makes you feel like you are a million fucking bucks, no matter who you are. And it's a testament to like every job he's ever been in. Every time he leaves, the company will say, we're losing a really good person. You are so incredibly valuable. And I want him to recognize that value in and of himself too, because I think that as a person who gives so much to other people, I also struggle with this. As someone who gives so much to other people, you don't always recognize that trait and quality in yourself. So Zachary, I know you're listening to this because you listen to every episode, because you're my cheerleader, my best friend, and my biggest supporter, and my soulmate. That is my favorite quality about you. And I hope I make you cry at work, because I know you listen to this at work. Number 2, this one is like so funny to me because everybody asks me this question all the freaking time. It's, where are my glasses from? Like, everybody loves these glasses. They are Ray-Ban. They're the Erica style. I got them at my eye doctor. So I don't think a lot of people know this about me, and now you're going to start noticing it in my videos. So I'm just calling out like a very insecure component of my body. But I have a lazy eye. I had surgery when I was younger. And so I have worn glasses my entire life. I tried contacts. I don't like touching my eye. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing. I don't like it. I hate it. I can't stand it. So I will forever be wearing glasses. And I got these glasses earlier this year. They were a little bit pricey with my prescription. I think they were like $300. However, I did link both the real Erica glasses that I have and then also a dupe to them on Amazon. If you're someone who's like, I don't need a prescription, I just want glasses because they're cute and I want them for blue light blocking, I linked a dupe that's like $16. And then I also linked my actual glasses if you want to like ask your eye doctor or carrier if they have these specific ones in my Amazon storefront. So it has the code for the Ray-Ban ones and it also has the like cheaper ones. I think I linked them under comfy clothes because I don't know how to work my Amazon storefront and I don't know how to create a new idea list. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so bad at like LTK and Amazon people, which like it also floors me that people ask me for links to my stuff because I'm like, I am the least aesthetic person. I wear like the same 4 sweatshirts that I hyperfixate on. Like I am not that person, but everybody loves my glasses. So I felt like it was time to actually share where they are from because I answer it in my comments a lot, but I finally linked them for all of you guys. So if you want my glasses, they're in there. Question number 3 for lifestyle. What does a day/week look like for me? This is a fully loaded question. I also got a ton of questions from RD to Bs about like how I got to where I am today, how like I run my own private practice, all of those things. And so I'm going to reserve a lot of those questions for my RD mentorship group that I'm going to have. So I'm going to host like a live Zoom session every couple months for RD to Bs to just ask me questions. So if you haven't already, I'll share that registration link in the show notes. And then I'll also put it up on my Instagram story as well. But a day/a week for me looks different every single week. I'm trying to get better at time blocking. So like setting specific days for specific tasks. Like one day is content creation. One day is podcast recording. One day is primarily like emails and admin work. However, it doesn't normally go like that. So let me tell you a little bit about what a typical day looks like for me. So I see clients every other week. However, it's starting to kind of bleed into like I have different clients on opposite weeks. So I usually see clients on a weekly basis. Just one week is more frequent than the other. So I see clients on a biweekly basis. So on my weeks where I have less clients, typically I wake up around 5. I go to the gym. I get to the gym around 6 o'clock, work out from like 6 to 7. Sometimes like if we get there later, it's like 6:30 to 7:30. I usually get home between 7:30 and 8. I shower, get ready for the day, sit down and eat breakfast. I'll answer emails. And then if I have an early morning client, I'll do my client morning session. Typically, I'm either filming content or recording a podcast from like 10 to noon because those tend to be my most productive and like brain space hours. In the afternoon, I either have clients and or I have some sort of like admin task. So whether that's actually posting the content, submitting brand deal content, and or like emails, working on group coaching courses, working on like all of these back end things that go into like running the private practice. I do a lot of that in the afternoon. Typically, I'll also walk the dogs around like 3 or 4 o'clock. Some evenings I have like group coaching or I have other meetings. I'm also working on like Pesce interchangeably in here as well. So like really to say that every single day and week looks completely different for me, but the tasks that I'm doing every single week are content creation, working one-on-one with my clients, working with my group coaching clients, which by the way, Cassidy and I, the one who was on my podcast on like self-care isn't selfish, we're coming out with a combined group coaching program in the next 2 weeks, and it's going to be fucking epic. So that one, it's going to talk about healing your hormone. Well, I don't want to say healing your hormones, supporting your metabolism through balanced habits and intuitive eating. I am so freaking excited for that program as well. So I have been working a ton on that behind the scenes. Also working one-on-one with my clients. I answer their food and mood journals. I answer them in their one-on-one chats, all of those types of things, managing emails, managing Pesce type stuff and shipments and all of that. So yeah, a day/a week for me looks really fucking crazy every single week. And I have no balance and no sense of time management. It's something that I am working on very hard. And I was having this thought this morning actually, because I was thinking about how being an entrepreneur is like the easiest and hardest job in the entire world. And I say that because I think that it's one of the hardest jobs in the world because it's a lot of fucking work. Like being an entrepreneur is so much back end work that a lot of people don't see. Like I work more hours now than I ever worked in corporate America. I work on the weekends, I work evenings, I work nights. Like I don't really have the option, but I also have the option to go to therapy in the middle of the day on a Monday. I have the option to take my dogs for a walk at 3:00 every day. I have the option to go do a workout class in the middle of the day if I really want to. And it's also the easiest job in the world because I genuinely love what I'm working on. I'm not working on something, and this is no bash to a corporate job. Like, if you love your corporate job, you freaking go, girl. Like, I am so happy that you have found a job that you love. This is just my personal opinion and like experience with entrepreneurship is that for me, working on something that I've created and being in control of my income motivates me so much more that working on the weekends or working into the evenings or working longer hours doesn't feel hard because it's something that I genuinely love and it's something that I genuinely want to do because I love growing my own business. Yes, there is a balance of being simultaneously burnt the fuck out and also wanting to grow and being obsessed with what I do. But I think that that's why being an entrepreneur is, like I said, the hardest and easiest thing that you'll ever do. And then last but not least, my number one tip to how I got to where I am today. My number one tip is that you have to do something. For the longest, I've had my LLC, so my business, since 2020. I didn't go full-time for myself till January 1st of 2024. I wanted to start posting content in 2017. I didn't start consistently posting content until 2021 because I was worried about what other people would think about me. I was worried that I didn't know what I was doing. I was worried that it wasn't aesthetic enough. I was worried that it wasn't perfect enough. I worried myself into giving myself paralysis by analysis, and I just didn't do anything. And then my business didn't go anywhere. The moment that I just said, fuck it, let me try to put all of my eggs into this basket and see what can happen, it has grown exponentially in the last year, more so than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. And that's come from a lot of hard work. It's come from a lot of grit and a lot of dedication, but it's also come from the fact that I did something. I put one foot in front of the other and I've learned as I've gone. Have I messed up? Abso-fucking-lutely. Have I made mistakes? 100%. Have I worked and done things that I didn't want to do? Yeah, I have. But now with the hindsight that I have and what I've learned over the course of the last year and a half of really kind of going all in on my own business has been that you just have to do something. Because if you don't do something, nothing is going to happen. You can't just manifest or say things and expect them to fall into your lap. You have to put action behind the manifestation. So that is my number one tip to how I got to where I am today. You got to just put one foot in front of the other. Reach out to that person, post the video, send the email. It does not matter what it looks like to you, but just take that one step to get you to where you want to go. I got a bunch of other questions that I'm probably going to do another solo Q&A here in like a month or so to answer those ones as well. But that is all the questions that we have time for today. As always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of my community. This is one of my favorite parts of my job. I feel so blessed that I get to do this on a weekly basis. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. I love you, and I will talk to you soon. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Simply Balanced. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing a part of your day with me. I hope you find inspiration in our discussion and feel more equipped to embrace the balanced girl aesthetic in your daily life. Remember, balance is a journey, not a destination. It's about finding what works for you in your unique way. As we part ways, I encourage you to reflect on one thing you learned today and how you can incorporate that into your life to create more balance. Don't forget to subscribe to Simply Balanced so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed our time together, consider leaving a review or sharing the podcast with a friend. Your support means the world, and until next time, keep striving for balance, nourish your body and mind, and remember to cherish life's simple pleasures. This is Taylor Grasso signing off. Stay balanced and see you next episode.